Welcome back to Get a Grip on Lighting. On today's show, we have Lynne Peeples. Lynne is a science journalist and former staff reporter at the Huffington Post. Her writing has also appeared in The Guardian, Scientific American, Nature, and other publications. Before her move to writing, she crunched numbers as a biostatistician for HIV clinical trials and environmental health studies. Peeples was an MIT Knight Science Journalism Fellow and holds a master's degree in biostatistics from the Harvard School of Public Health and Harvard School of Public Health and in science journalism from New York University. She lives in Seattle. Now you might be wondering, what the heck is she doing with Greg and Michael on Get a Grip on Lighting? This doesn't sound right. Well, Ms. Peeples wrote a book. It's called The Inner Clock: Living in Sync with Our Circadian Rhythm. The book explores the science of circadian rhythms, the body's 24-hour biological clocks, and their impact on health, productivity, and well-being, offering practical strategies to align modern lifestyles with these natural cycles. You ready for this one, Greg? The core concept of the book. Circadian, you ready? This is going to be I think I'm going to be able to do it. Circadian rhythms driven by the suprachiasmatic nucleus. There you go. In the brain, regulate sleep, hormonal production, body temperature, and metabolism. But modern disruptions like electric light and irregular schedules can desynchronize them. So now that you know why Ms. Peeples is on Get a Grip on Lighting, we're going to ask you to go quickly to keep it easy, Greg. We got to keep it easy all the time around here. We got to go to KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com, the easy folks of lighting.
Hey, you know what they do better than anyone is make it selectable. I know we'll talk maybe a little bit today about color temps and Kelvin and how that matters in terms of your circadian rhythm. But Keystone gives you the flexibility, gives you the options with most of their products now, whether it's a light bulb, a retrofit kit, or a fixture. They're selectable, easy to work with, easy to choose, easy to change if you want to as well, anytime.
So go with the big easy every time at KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. Of course, we're members, they're members. Everybody should be a member if you have light bulbs in a warehouse. If you have light bulbs in a warehouse and you sell them on the counter, over the phone, on Amazon, on the internet, whatever you do, but if you have light bulbs in a warehouse, NAILED, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, is your crucial shield. We work for you guys out there and gals out there in the trenches selling lighting every day. So you go to naild.org, and guess what? All the cool kids are going to be in St. Paul, Minnesota, September 22nd to 24th for the big bash, the big one, the NAILED convention. That's right. So get it all at nailed.org. Lynne Peeples, welcome to Get a Grip on Lighting.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, this comes up a lot. We had Mario Mata on 395, Greg. And Mario talked about proof that lighting is a disruptor of melatonin, all this kind of science stuff, and that it causes a lot of problems for people. Can you explain what circadian rhythms are just quickly and why electric lighting, plays such a critical role in regulating them?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
disrupting
It's a
them,
good,
maybe? Or disrupting them, maybe, is a better way to put it.
sure, yeah. Yeah, let's start with kind of the basics of, circadian rhythms. People hear that, they think about your sleep wake rhythm, which is a big part of it. But really, the big picture is that our bodies are filled with trillions of what I call inner clocks, these circadian clocks. Essentially, every cell in your body has them. And we evolved with these clocks coordinating with each other and with nature. In particular, the light and dark rhythm of our pirouetting planet to keep us in sync and ensure that all our body systems, whether we're talking about metabolism or our immune system or indeed our sleep wake rhythm, that is optimized according to what's happening in the environment around us, because we can't be on full power, full bore with every body system at 24 hours a day. We just don't have that kind of energy, right? So evolution helped us kind of optimize, when should our metabolism be at its peak, when should our strength be at its peak, when should we be most tired to fall asleep. So all these things are kind of assigned an optimal time around the clock, but we need that connection with the light and dark cycle
Mhm.
of our environment to ensure those stay in sync. And the problem I get to in the book is modern society in so many ways has really disconnected us from those natural cycles that keep our bodies in sync and doing the right things at the right times. And a huge part of that is that we live indoors. We spend on average more than 90% of our time indoors. So we're relying on electric lighting significantly. And, historically, and especially kind of, in recent years when we've changed over to LEDs, like we are not getting the same intensity and the same wavelengths of light that the sun gives us when we're indoors. So I know we'll get more into that, but that's essentially the idea. That's why talking about circadian rhythms is really important in this context.
So humans are a diurnal species, right? So we've evolved to varying degrees to be asleep during the night and awake during the day. Now there's different people have different ways of interacting with that. Some people stay up later, some people get up earlier, but generally that is true for our species. How does electric light impact our species? And I like to talk like this because a lot of times humans don't see themselves as a species that is diurnal.
Right.
So I,
Yeah.
I use this language intentionally to make people understand that this is true. It's not something you can beat. And so how does electric light specifically impact that?
Right. Yeah. We are biologically programmed to, right, be awake and alert and doing things during the daylight hours
Mhm.
for the most part. As you said, there are some extreme night owls that flip it around, but right. So that's our niche on this planet. And again, we evolved outdoors where we had the nighttime all dark and daytime illuminated by the sun, which concentrates in the middle of the day wavelengths around the blue spectrum, or the blue wavelengths of light are kind of the key wavelengths that are coming down. You get the full spectrum, that's why you hear that term, but it's really concentrated blue. That tells our bodies that it's daytime. And when we're indoors and we have electric lights, it depends on the kind of light we're talking about, but in general, we can say that the wavelengths coming out of light fixtures don't represent the full spectrum. And oftentimes they're leaving out the key wavelengths that are telling our bodies that it's daytime, or they're not pumping out enough photons, enough illumination to get even close to what the sun provides. So our bodies are not interpreting that as it's daytime. So we're kind of living in this constant twilight a lot of the times when we're
Hmm.
indoors.
Hmm.
And then it's on both ends of the day, it's a problem because during the day, we might not be getting enough intensity or the right wavelengths of light. And then at night, often our indoor environments look about the same as they did during the day, right? We're not getting that contrast
Hmm.
our body is looking for. And our eyes, which, I mean, if we really want to get technical, there's these IPRGC cells in our eyes that are this photoreceptor that we've only recently discovered to kind of go along with rods and cones that we learned about, back in school. So these new photoreceptors are the ones that are interpreting that light um, for our circadian rhythms. So they're sending that signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus that you mentioned in the brain, and that information is telling us again the time of day. So those photoreceptors are more sensitive to light at night. So even if it's dimmer, it's taking in more of that information. It gets really confused when nighttime light, looks a lot like daytime light. We're not getting that contrast.
So it's interesting that you use the word information because
Mhm.
Dr. Jennifer Veach on Get a Grip on Lighting a long time ago, Greg, I don't know if you remember way back, some like episode 85 or something like that. She was in studio here in Toronto. She had said that a good definition of light is information. So light, in fact, has been described in many different. It's a wave. It's this, blah, blah, blah. But in many ways, it's simply giving us information. Is it possible for electric light to deliver healthy information to our cells, or can it only do damage?
It is possible that it could be much healthier. And yes,
Okay.
I mean, we're never gonna beat the real thing. The sun and then nighttime darkness. I mean, there's no way we're gonna beat being outdoors, but we can get a lot closer. And um, a lot of modern lighting is getting closer and closer. So, yeah, I mean, the idea really is to be able to manipulate. those wavelengths to get closer to what we would get outdoors. So that means during the day, if we have a tunable LED light that can, blast out pretty decent intensity, but yet make it not too shocking to our eyes, or what's the word I'm looking for? More palpable. Yeah, right. Yeah. So that light, if we can intensify the blue during the day and then pull out the blue wavelengths at night, so it's a warmer hue that our ancestors may have experienced, outdoors back in the day with a campfire,
Sure.
and just the light of the moon and campfire. So really, it's the day and night, making sure that's a distinction. I think a lot of more and more modern LEDs are capable of doing that. It's just, yeah, whether they're
Yeah.
put to use and whether people choose those particular products.
What year did you write the book?
This was published last September, so 2024.
And then what inspired you to write it?
It's funny. I've always had sleep problems my entire life. I
Mhm.
live in Seattle. I grew up in Seattle, and we're, at a pretty high latitude. So we are one of those places where the day length really fluctuates throughout the year. Get really short days in the winter, and I've suffered from seasonal affective disorder. I went to a high school that started at 7:30 in the morning, which I get into in the book, kind of what a problem that is when you're forcing teenagers who are naturally night owls to get up so early and basically not see daylight all day. That really was kind of the background, but it was lighting at what was then Safeco Field, now T-Mobile Park, my Seattle Mariners baseball stadium. I had an opportunity to tour, and they were showing off new LED lights they had in the stadium. And I went there for the stadium part. I was excited to stand at home plate for the first time in my life, experience these lights. And then they took us into the locker room where they had also replaced the lighting, and they had installed circadian lighting. I had never heard this term, but they installed LED lights that they would brighten and intensify with blue before the games for the players to help energize them. And then after the players, they'd come back to the locker room and they'd have the lights dimmer and warmer to help them sleep that night. So that really is what kind of triggered me to go down all the rabbit holes and connect all the dots between what we're finding with regard to our disrupted rhythms and what we can do about it.
Yeah, and what kind of interests me about it is you don't maybe you know more about lighting than I think, but I'm assuming you don't know the lighting that Mike and I have known because we've been in it for 20 years. And why wasn't circadian talked about before? Is it because LED is so good at mimicking it that it's now it's like, oh wow, we can
It's so
actually do
bad at
something about it?
disrupting it.
Or is it so bad at yeah?
That's
So like,
that's the reality.
why wasn't it talked about with
You know what?
fluorescent lighting 10, 15 years ago or whatever? That's what I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Yes. So, absolutely, you guys are certainly more in on the technical details of the
Mhm.
lighting industry itself. I think it's been only about 20 years or so, maybe 30, since we've discovered this third photoreceptor in the eye and have been able to differentiate the differences between the visual system and the circadian system with regard to what that information that we're talking about can do to it. So it's really deceiving. We can be indoors under electric lighting, and to our eyes, our consciousness, the visual system, which we're more conscious of, it can look bright, and we're not, we don't feel like we're missing anything necessarily, right? And it's only really the scientists going behind the scenes, understanding that there's this other system that is taking that information and interpreting it very differently. Again, it takes multiple fold more intensity of light to trigger the circadian system than it does the visual system. And that's only recent knowledge. And the other, I'm sure you're more aware of this than I, but building codes, all these things we've built over the last many decades that inform the lighting choices in a space, that has leaned on the visual system, which the visual system leans on it's centered around green wavelengths of light. That is the wavelength that the visual system um, takes in as the strongest, brightest, helps us see the most. And when you lean codes on the green, you're, you know, basically weighing the blue wavelengths less. So those blue wavelengths that the circadian system needs have been overlooked. They haven't been valued in the same way. So yeah, essentially our living spaces are the codes for those for work, residential, uh, is all about the visual system and has not been taken into account the health effects, potential health effects of that light.
Sure. So it's interesting you bring up that Safeco Field example. I do some work with the Minnesota Twins and Target Field here, and they are just
Oh,
doing
cool.
the same system. They're going through that in their locker room, not through me. I'm guessing Major League
Uh-huh.
is somehow involved. But do you believe that that's true and that can actually affect the player's performance, that system they have at Safeco?
That's a good question. I wish I could
Yeah.
say my Mariners just started winning as soon as they put that lighting in. Not
Yeah.
so much. We're still waiting for that World Series. Um, but theoretically, yes, it can help. There's evidence to show that blue wavelengths of light, intense blue light, it not only helps entrain our circadian rhythms, but there's a direct energizing effects of it. And so studies have shown that, students perform better on tests when under blue wavelength light, for example. And now a lot of athletes are going around. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're wearing these glasses that actually shine blue light down on their eyes.
I've seen
And
that.
there's, some evidence that they do that before or a competition that can improve their performance. So, the evidence is building. There's still a lot of questions, and there's not any standards to really define what, we should do when and where. But there is the science that, this could be potentially energizing. And then again, there's lots and lots of science now that shows that if we can cut out that blue light at night, that our melatonin will more easily rise to help trigger all the physiological effects needed to sleep well. So
So we're gonna get into get a grip on lighting here in a second because I'm gonna say something that might might kind of make people step back and pause. I'm very suspicious of when I encounter uh, products or services that are backed by science.
hmm,
Immediately, my spider brain goes on.
yeah.
And there's been two things that I do a lot of podcasts. We do a podcast on restoring darkness too, which talks a lot about this. And so, for example, there's a lot of evidence that sunscreen is bad for you, not good for you, and that sunscreen is some. They have a lot of evidence for it, but it's sunglasses are another one of these things where sunglasses, you now have sunglasses that are allowing the blue light in. The old ones, they were saying blue light was bad or this light is bad for you. And so there's a lot
Right.
of people that believe that if they get up in the morning in their condo, go down to their parking garage, get in their car, that if they drive outside, they should wear sunglasses to protect their eyes. And this is totally wrong,
Hmm.
especially if you live in a northern climate. You want as
Yep.
much sunlight going in directly into your eyes as you can get without looking at the sun specifically. How do we get the signal from the noise here? I mean, people wearing
Right.
glasses, I think that's a gimmick. Rich athletes get special lighting systems that cost $180,000 for a locker room. Okay, that's not really practical for the average
Yeah.
American or Canadian, never mind anybody in another country that's a developing country. How do we separate the signal from the noise? Does it just come back to that you should sleep at night and be outside during the day for a certain amount of time, and then everything else you kind of hope for the best?
Yeah, it's such a good point. I mean, it really is kind of the Wild West with some of this technology because it's like fancy and new, and people are selling these products without any regulation on really kind of what they can say about them
Hmm.
Mhm.
to a large extent. And that point was raised, many times by scientists I talked to for the book. So yeah, you really kind of need to take a step back. And to your last point, I think that's a really good one. If especially for those of us who can't afford the latest and greatest and whatever somebody's trying to, some fancy technology somebody's trying to sell us. If we just try to get outside first thing in the morning, even if it's cloudy outside and it doesn't look that bright, I can guarantee you, with very, very rare exceptions, it can get really dark here in Seattle, but very rare exceptions, it's going to be brighter than indoors. And
Oh
it's going to be
yeah.
enough to tell your brain that it is daytime. And in the first part of the day, that's the most important time to get that cue. Like all day, the most daylight you can get, the better. And then, yeah, at night, turn out the lights, save the energy. turn on, light some candles, or at least use a warm, maybe table lamp. Just try to cut out those bright overhead lights, especially anything that has that, strong blue wavelength in it. I mean, it's really kind of that simple. You don't need anything fancy to do this. Maybe there's some products out there for, especially in specific environments where it's really hard to get that daylight. Maybe you're stuck in the back of a warehouse with no access to windows, for a 12-hour shift or something, and you can't get daylight. That's where it's really kind of imperative that we come up with some solutions to help these people out. I get into this equity issue in the book of daylight deserts and darkness deserts. And it's often the same populations of people that are suffering or living in both of these, right? Yeah, they might be night shift workers. So there's that whole component of it. But also they may be living in a basement apartment without great daylight access. And then they're going to work, and it's unlikely they have the corner office with windows. They might be in the back of a house space, right?
Sure.
Or warehouse. And so they're not getting the light during the day. Yet at night, if they're like at basement or first floor level, you got the cars going by, you got the street lights, or maybe they're in a social housing complex with bright LEDs or police floodlights trying to make the space safe, and they're shining into their bedroom windows. So I think that's something that's been overlooked, to really think about how do we help these people? And that's where, electric lighting can really come into play.
Or not the lack of electric lighting. You see,
well, but I mean, okay, so I should say, so kind of trying to leverage the best of the science and applying that to lighting. So maybe implementing more tunable lighting that we know can be helpful. So having that bright light during the day in a workplace that has no windows. And then at night, either, using
what's
that
going to
tunable
happen
setting.
though? You know what's going to happen?
Yeah.
The very people that need it are going to complain that the lights are too bright, Greg. That happens all the time with lighting. We have to go in. And if I stand there and say, listen, buddy, your circadian rhythm needs this, they're going to say, get out of here. What are you talking about? What are you talking, my Canadian rhythm? What are you talking about? So,
So that's a good point. This is where we need to make that light more aesthetically pleasing, and I think from what I understand, you probably know this better, but physicists are working to try to manipulate the wavelengths to make it less glaring and stark. There's Skyview lamp. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
yeah,
BIOS lighting.
Yeah, they're friends of ours.
So they're playing around with this. Okay. And so, I've sampled some of that, and it does, the
Skyview tile is an amazing product. And it's actually within reach. It's affordable. That's if you're listening to this, and I know that Keystone Stock is sponsoring this podcast, but the Skyview tile is an amazing product made by BIOS. It's one of the best I've ever seen. I want to talk. Is there any hope for shift workers?
Very good question. Yes, there is. I mean, bottom line, it's unfortunate that so many people have to do that. But with our, 24/7 society and what people now expect, there are just a lot more shift workers required. And then, of course, we have our, our doctors and our nurses and our firefighters that we will, regardless, always need to be able to fill all the hours of the day. But the science is finding some means to help these people mitigate some of the health concerns, because we are seeing, higher rates of chronic disease, mental health issues, a lot of physical health issues, cancers are higher in the shift work population. But things like trying to restrict the eating or the meals that these people consume to daylight hours, even if they're working the night shift. There's some evidence out of Harvard that can help reduce the metabolic consequences, which is one of the biggest concerns in that population. They're finding that could go a long ways in helping them out. And then, employers could think about how they design the shift work schedules, because if you have a rotating shift, for example, there's certain things you could do to try to how you organize that, and having like the shifts a little later every day rather than flip-flopping. And yeah, the scientists are working on this, and there's some good stuff coming out both for employers and employees to try to help reduce the consequences. And I get into that in the book.
What's interesting, I'm going to say something. There's two things that people rarely look at. You were talking about equity, And that's a major
Yep.
issue with lighting because the people that get paid the most are most likely to get involved in these kinds of interventions. But the guy that works at
Right.
Walmart, the 24-hour Walmart, we need to start asking ourselves if we need 24-hour Walmart, and that's a whole other question. But there's two things that are in statistics that are absolutely mind blowing, and that is the difference between income between shorter men and taller men, and it regardless of race or any ethnicity, education, it's just such a stark contrast from 5 feet to 6 feet two, goes up 10%, something like that. It's a massive
Wow.
difference. And the other is the health outcomes for shift workers. It is so blatantly obvious that being a shift worker is a hazard to your health, and being short is a hazard to your income if you're a dude. Those two things are just, when you look at
Yeah.
statistics, they're so starkly obvious that those things are real, that how do we, we need to minimize shift work. Like, it's almost like, we have to minimize it, or you can only be a shift worker for a maximum of 5 years. After that, you have to be rotated out of that by law or regulation or something like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Like, that's how serious the consequences are from being a shift worker. And that is not common knowledge. People don't know that being a shift worker, higher divorce rates, higher cancer rates, higher everything across the board, every health outcome and life outcome you can imagine is brutally impacted by being a shift worker. And people don't know that.
I think it's totally true. I had one scientist tell me that he thinks shift workers should receive hazard pay. And I mean, the data support that. And yeah, do you need that package from Amazon delivered on your doorstep by the time you wake up in the morning, 4 a.m.? I mean, yeah, it's just really hard for society to go back, right? But there are a lot of these jobs that I feel like, yeah, do we really need to force these people to risk their health and their happiness for
Greg,
our,
oh,
yeah.
sorry, finish up.
Oh, no, we're
I was
good.
just going to say that Lynne Peeples wants to keep it easy, Greg. She wants to keep it easy. You know who else keeps it easy? The Big Easy. KeystoneTech.com. Go to KeyStonetech.com for the easy folks.
That's right. We talked about at the beginning. There's selectable fixture, bulb, kit, everything. Get the right color. Work with that circadian rhythm a little bit. They'll continue to advance as that advances too. So be ready for it, and always look for Keystone for anything lighting related.
And if you listen, I'm an Audible guy. I used to love to read books, but now I'm so busy all the time. I barely have time to read the newspaper, which I like to do too. But if you want to get it on Audible, the Inner Clock, Living in Sync with Our Circadian Rhythm, is available there. So go grab it if you got that subscription, or if you want to pick it up, I'm sure it's on Amazon and everywhere you can find great books. Is that so, Lynn?
That is correct. Yes,
Okay.
anywhere you buy your books.
Anywhere you get your books, you can find the Inner Clock, Living in Sync with Our Circadian Rhythm. We're also going to list Lynn's socials in the show notes, so go down and check them out. And if you want to check out her Instagram, X, and she's got Facebook and LinkedIn all there. And of course, do you have light bulbs in a warehouse? I'm talking to you. That's right. The one listening to this, you're driving along, you're mowing your lawn, whatever you're doing. You got to join Nailed, man. This is where all the action happens. If you're lighting, we support the interests of independent lighting distributors just like you. If you're an agent, there's another one for you. I know you like listening to Get a Grip on Lighting, all you designers and manufacturers, but you all have your own associations. This association is for lighting distributors. Go to nald.org. Our convention, September 22nd and 24th. Greg, all the cool kids are going to be there.
St. Paul, Minnesota. Be ready.